Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan.
Hey Grump, how you doing? Happy Super Wildcard Weekend. Don't have to worry about those pesky Giants getting in our way this weekend. We get to actually enjoy good teams for a change. So it's been pretty fun this weekend. There's been some blowouts, but some really good games too. But the most important thing is Dallas, Philly, gone.
It's true, and honestly, it has been a little bit of a weight off. Like even though we're kind of on autopilot in terms of viewing the Giants games the last couple of weeks, just because of the state of the team, the season, how it went, whatever. It still was stressful to see the boys in blue. You know what I mean? Just getting whooped and just, you know, whatever. But this was finally a weekend where you're like you said, not distracted by any of that, just sitting back and watching football like the times before this podcast. And kind of speaking of which, it's been kind of a year. It's been a year for the Giants. That's what this whole episode is going to be about. But it's been a year for us too. We've kind of grown quite a bit. We've gotten to know a lot of you, and in that sense, it's been really cool. But for those of you who are new here and have only been following us for just this year, or just a portion of this year, or just recently, just so you guys know, like, we are available on Twitter at football_grump, right underneath my picture, at the Cranky Fan, right underneath his picture. We're on Twitter. We interact with all of you guys, DMs open, stuff like that. And the podcast also, like, if YouTube isn't your thing, isn't the best way for you to listen to the podcast, there's an audio version. It's on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, you know, anywhere where you get your normal podcasts, it's available there too. But for those of you who are interested in the YouTube stuff, and that is the best way to do it, this offseason, as we do draft stuff and things like that, the video stuff will have some extra content there. There will be some video along with it that's beneficial to the conversation, things like that. And as we get into the season itself, there's a lot more supplemental content on YouTube as well. So subscribing there actually is pretty helpful. I can't wait for that. That's going to be fun. But we got to get over where we're at. And quite frankly, this is a team now that is starting fresh. And for whatever complaints we have about ownership, whatever, they severed general manager and head coach alike. They don't seem to be hiring from within. This looks to be a true GM search. I mean, 9 candidates interviewed already as of today. With their Zoom meetings, select few will have a second interview to narrow down to the final contestant, I guess. But in 2018, when we did this GM search, only 4 guys interviewed. And if you were following this show then, we were not really impressed with anything that was happening at that time.
No.
Yeah.
It seemed kind of rushed. It seemed kind of forced. It seemed kind of... They knew who they wanted already, so they were going through some motions, and they weren't picking really... I don't know, qualified is the right word, but really...
It just seemed like there was no due diligence.
No.
It seemed very much like when they asked Ernie Accorsi for help finding candidates, it was more like asking Ernie Accorsi who to hire. Right. And that was it. I mean, but whatever. I mean, this is not about 2018 anymore. Hopefully, this is a fresh start that is in fact fresh.
And also, we can also say that the worst is over right now. I mean, the worst was what is going to happen? Are they going to fire Judge? Yes or no? When's the Gettleman retirement? Yes or no? Are we going to hire from within? Yes or no? That's all rock bottom. That complete indecision of anything. Major decisions have now been made. You know, which path this franchise is going to move forward. So we've already passed the darkest, bottomless pit of this franchise, and now it's up to the Maras and the Tishes
to build a ladder out of the pit. That's
exactly.
It. Yeah. We put down the shovel. We're no longer digging, we hope. And now it's time to build a ladder and get out of the pit. But the first way to improve yourself is to analyze where you are messed up and where you need to improve. And the best way to do that is to take a look in the mirror. So this episode is all going to be about the 2021 year in review. Joe Judge's final year with the team, Dave Gettleman's final year with the team. It didn't start off bad feeling for us. I mean, when you really go back to the beginning of it, we were feeling pretty elated following the draft. A little bit of question mark feeling about how we had neglected to address the offensive line at that time, but otherwise happy with the trade down, happy with Kadarius Toney, happy with Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah, we were excited about going forward. We were also realistic. We've said it many times on this show. We knew we almost made the playoffs last year. We also knew we weren't a playoff team. It's a big difference. So we were realistic on where we were coming from. We were hoping to see the push to, competing to win this division, because we knew this was a crappy division. Dallas, complete, as bad as what happened yesterday, and they're out and they're all pissed today in Dallas, but they made a heck of a recovery from last year. They were awful last year. They were really.
They were missing their starting quarterback. Yeah. I mean, that's
But still, they also had the worst defense in their team's history last year. And,
that's true.
They played much, much better defense. So, but going into the season, we didn't know that. We also thought that Philly would be one of the worst teams in the league.
They
kind of outkicked their coverage a little bit too. Now, if you look at Dallas and Philly's, record this year, they feasted on bad schedules and they beat bad teams. They
lost to us. So
yeah, but still, we kind of came in with kind of guarded optimism that we were going to continue the growth of what we saw towards the end of 2020. And
yeah. It didn't happen. Yeah, and it didn't happen. And you could see the cracks starting to form right at the beginning, I think. And don't think that everything I say in here is such a negative but the cracks started right away. I mean, Kadarius Toney had a very auspicious start here. His minicamp stuff, is it ultimately going to define his career? Probably not. It could, but it's certainly defined this year.
It's going to define your perception of him, or a lot of people.
Right, but it definitely defined this year. There's no shooting around it that Kadarius Toney was unavailable this year. That is just a fact. And some of it was nagging injuries. All of it was nagging injuries, I guess, aside from COVID stuff, which isn't really his fault. But it started right away with the minicamp stuff. But really, the story of this year has to be not improving where they were screwed up in 2020, added with injuries. I mean, they just kind of tried to throw money at the problem instead of fixing the problem. The problem was an offense that just wasn't creative. And the thought of just get Daniel Jones some talent, get him some wide receivers, and get Saquon Barkley healthy, and we're better, that doesn't really solve the problem. That almost, if anything, it hides the problem.
It's repeating a problem they've done in the past, is they've been building outside in. Yeah. They tried to, we have Andrew Thomas and, the offensive line. They made some little moves around the margins a little late to kind of hopefully bolster depth more than anything. And then when guys retired in preseason, that all kind of went by the wayside. You had, then of course we had the untimely injuries. So trying to get away with it for a year backfired as badly as it could possibly backfire. As badly as
it could. If everyone were healthy, I don't think it would have backfired. I think it would have been, one of those things where it's like, we can get rid of this offensive coordinator and get some offensive line talent, and we're probably okay. It's probably how we'd end up feeling after this, but there's no way people just stay healthy like that. And in fact, we were just the most injured team this year, and it started really early with starter Shane Lemieux in July 29th hurt himself and kind of practiced on the side, didn't really do any real work until the first week, played one series, and was done for the year. That's when it really started. Immediately following Lemieux on July 29th, in early August, Levine Toilolo with the Achilles injury, and then 3 retirings that same week. I mean, it really started to get out of hand really quickly, and that patchwork trading guys for new offensive lineman depth, which then became starters, it was as bad as you can really have it go. And we came into the year, despite all of that, thinking Denver is terrible. We've got this week 1. It's going to be the first time we're starting 1-0 in a long time, and that just didn't happen. The defense was surprisingly shitty to start the year, and they lost that game 27-13. Denver went 10 of 15 on third down. Ugh.
Yeah, that was definitely a harbinger what was going to happen for pretty much the rest of the year, because we both thought, if I remember, we both had as a win to start the season in our preseason
We were
predictions.
confident, yeah.
Yeah. We were like, this is going to be a statement game. We beat a team like Denver, a team that I don't know if you think we should beat them. And Denver,
They
ups and
fired their
downs.
head coach too.
Yeah, exactly. But a game, if you think you're not mediocre, let's start the bar being low. It's a game you need to win, and we didn't. And the questions started immediately.
Yeah, and then we went into Washington thinking. Well, I mean, personally, was that the defense was bad, but the offense has got to get it together because we saw it all in the preseason. They weren't really running anything downfield. Nothing really looked better despite all this talent they got. They were still doing the same thing. They go to Washington and they lose this game 30-29 on that last second field goal, which was missed, but then there was a bad penalty called in which Dexter Lawrence was not offsides, but they called it anyway. The one thing to really take away from this game is that this was the game where early on, I want to say it was, if it wasn't the first quarter, it was very early in the second quarter that Nick Gates broke his leg. And this is where the whole season really started to fall apart because Nick Gates was probably it's not even close to probably, he was the best interior offensive line that we had.
Right.
And then there is no question about that, especially with Shane Lemieux not playing at all. And, aside from just a talent perspective, he was very heady. I mean, he was probably the smartest guy there. He knew the playbook really well. And you could see in that game that Daniel Jones had to take over the protection responsibilities once Nick Gates went out. And in foreign territory, it was loud. I believe it was Monday Night Football, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it was Sunday night. Yeah, I think it was Monday night. No, it was fucking Thursday night. We had that bullshit Thursday night game. Yeah, that's right. And, you could see in the loud environment, he's calling out the protections, and he actually played pretty well. 22 of 32 for 250 yards, plus 95 rushing yards in that game is not bad for Daniel Jones. But the defense broke down at the end, allowed them to go right down the field, kick that field goal. They got 2 tries at it, which is bullshit, and they lost again. And I remember that game. After that game, I was mad. That was when I was truly pissed off.
Well, that's what we knew. Really, any serious hopes that this team could, the numbers. The teams that are 0-2 to start the season. Now, granted, there is an extra game, so that might be a little different now. But you're putting yourself in a serious hole, and more importantly, for
division game,
our psyche. Here we go again. Yep. Another year we're starting 0-2. But Grump, I guess we talk about the defense for a second. What was the biggest reason, do you think, why the defense was, sputtering in the first 2, 3, 4 games? And then, what improved as the season? What was the biggest problem you saw early on?
Nothing improved, I can tell you that. What the performance changed because the scheme changed. What we tried to do was we went out and bought some very nice cover corners. We got Adoree Jackson for a lot of money to play man-to-man. And he is a better man-to-man corner than James Bradbury, who's already very good. We have those 3 back-end guys with Logan Ryan, Xavier McKinney, and Jabril Peppers. So we had a very stacked secondary with Blake Martinez as a very capable coverage linebacker, and Tate Crowder is not so bad at that either. We had this stacked secondary to allow everyone to go man-to-man and rush the passer. Problem is, we don't have a pass rusher. What happened those first 3-ish games is no one could get home. And so no one, even the best cover corners in the league, can cover man-to-man for long enough. So the shift then became to go back to that same style of defense as last year where it's a lot of disguised zone coverages. You give up you give up 9 yards, you don't give up 10. You know what I mean? And that's really where it came down to, is we couldn't rush the passer.
And that's the thing, too. It's everybody wants to help, improve this team with the offensive line. But edge rushers almost is an important problem with this. But we have so many holes to fix. And that's one of the things that Dave Gettleman's going to go down with is he drafted Kadarius Toney, who's a nice player, and probably would help, offense. But there are such glaring holes on this team that were not fixed. And it's almost like you're sealing your fate for this year by not addressing the 2 biggest issues on this team. And so, I don't know. You're just seeing the symptoms popping up, more of the warts, and that's one of the big reasons we are right now.
I tend to agree. And we started to see that switch around week 4. I mean, week 3, the big thing against Atlanta, another game we were sure we were going to win, lost on a game-ending field goal, of course. But the big thing there was that Blake Martinez down for the year with that torn ACL. I mean, we'll get more into how important that is at the end of the year. But also, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, hamstring injuries in this game, definitely important. But we move into week 4, and this is where we started to see, this is where I got excited, because this was where it was more like, this is the team that I thought we had. Daniel Jones goes down to New Orleans and wins in overtime. He goes 28 of 40 for 402 yards, 2 touchdowns, 27 yards rushing. This was Kadarius Toney's
no turnovers, right?
I don't I think there was one, but it was like a end of half launch.
That's right. Yeah. It was a Hail Mary end of that. That doesn't count.
Yeah, and this was also where we finally saw Kadarius Toney like doing some real stuff. I felt much better about the offense. We looked steady, aggressive, effective. This was an exciting game. This was a big win. New Orleans is probably going to the playoffs if Jameis Winston doesn't get hurt.
Here's my takeaway from this. We're talking about week 4 now.
Mm-hmm.
We were very critical of the preseason, how it didn't seem like we were doing much of anything in the preseason. It was going to take – we looked very, very flat against Denver, and we criticized that coaching staff for not having this team ready to play on week 1. So
well, not for nothing. Could we have figured out that the defense was incapable of rushing the passer if we had really tried in preseason?
But my point is – we felt kind of excited also because this is week 4, and we thought by this time this team has played itself into game shape. You know, they're finally starters are playing, their cohesiveness more together, they're in their routine, which should have probably started during August and didn't. It was one of the things we were going to be watching with a very close eye next year if Joe Judge was still here. Is like, how would he change this preseason cadence, I guess. But yeah. This was all kind of part of everything. It felt like it was starting to come together. Like we were now a team ready to play the regular season.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is that one of Joe Judge's things at the end of the year was that he said that he learned a lot and that he learned more of what not to do than what to do. And I think that was in regards specifically to this year, not his whole time here. But it's interesting because I wonder if going too easy in the summer or in the preseason, which I guess is the summer, is something he doesn't want to do. And I wonder if that's partly due to the national perception of him being a fake tough guy because he makes guys run laps, which I need to vent about this again because it's so silly. Running laps is probably the easiest punishment you can get in the NFL. You can get fined for real amounts of money for fucking up if they want. But to jog lightly around the outside of the thing is easier work than the actual work you're supposed to be doing. So I hate this narrative that he's a, quote, fake tough guy because he makes guys run laps, because that's not tough. That's just making them accountable for making a mistake. That's how he chooses to punish them. It's not actually worse than Tom Coughlin, who used to fine guys for wearing tennis shoes or having a cell phone on the side at practice or some other such nonsense. I mean, not that I'm criticizing that. I'm just saying I would rather jog around the outside for my own mistake than wake up, go to my locker and see an envelope there with an invoice for $1,000 because of my equipment or some other shit. You know what I'm saying? I understand Michael Strahan's issues with Tom Coughlin a lot more than I would understand any player's issues with running laps with Joe Judge.
Well, also, I think there might have been some media people who had a bone to pick with Joe Judge for whatever reason.
Oh, because he's from New England. That storyline is already printed that he's another New England failure.
Right.
So, and another one trying to be Bill Belichick, which, by the way, at his press conferences and things like that, he does not at all sound like Bill Belichick. No.
Would Bill Belichick ever have an 11-minute rambling answer to a question?
If he were drunk. I don't know.
Fun.
Well, so we come off of that game and we go to Dallas week 5, and that's where the wheels just fly off the car. This is like the proverbial, like, this is like National Lampoon's Giants 2021 season, right? I mean, this is like Chevy Chase wrote the script for this year.
And I remember this game very succinctly because I was down in Tampa because it was during the playoffs, and I remember I was in a bar, and Rays playoffs are the big screen in front of me. Giants are just to the left, and I'm like kind of focusing 60-40 on baseball. Every time I look over, something bad's happening on the other screen. And I'm like, what the hell is going on today? It was just bad.
This was probably the worst. I mean, this really was the wheels coming off the car right here. This is where we saw the injuries just explode. Because I came into this game thinking, like, fuck Dallas, we've got this. Coming off that Saints game, it was like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. It's like you finally saw all those mess of pieces. Like, that's how they go together. And now you just got to put them in.
And none of us were believers in Dallas at the time either. I mean, it was just kind of
Well, there was that too. But also it was finally like everything we saw prior to the Saints game was us figuring it out. Now we've got it. Well, I don't necessarily disagree with all of that. Some of that is just like Jason Garrett just doesn't have it. That's just, it is what it is. But the injuries piled up immediately. Andrew Thomas, Jabril Peppers, Saquon Barkley. This is the game where Barkley rolled his ankle.
If you want to do like the Mount Rushmore, who like the 4 most important players on the team, that you got most of them right there.
Oh, well, you want the 4th one? This is Daniel Jones' concussion game.
Yeah, I mean, what's left?
Yeah, Kenny Golladay hurt his knee. He hyperextended his knee midway through the game. Matt Skura hurt his leg. And Kadarius Toney, despite going 10 of 13 for 189 yards and just barely missing a touchdown, hurt his ankle in this game. He was playing hurt for like half of the game.
Yeah.
And this was where I was like probably one of the lighter critics, I think, of Jason Garrett. But after this game and the series of play calls that led to Daniel Jones getting a concussion, we ran the same play 2 times in a row, and then we ran the rollout variation of it on 3rd down. Or maybe that was 3rd down. Mm-hmm. And then Daniel Jones went out there with nobody blocking in front of him and just got just a train wreck. Yeah. And then all of that just to have Mike Glennon go in there and run a QB sneak for a touchdown like it was the easiest thing in the world. Right after that. Yeah, this was where I was like, fuck Jason Garrett. Seriously.
To the end of the season, huh? You're thinking about Mike Glennon.
Yeah. Also of note is that Mike Glennon did not look horrendous in this game. He didn't look good, but he didn't look consistently late or off or anything like that. I mean, he just looked like a backup.
We speculated quite a bit towards the end of the season. There was something wrong with Mike Glennon physically.
Well, he got rocked in this game, and then he just kept getting rocked. So
yeah, exactly. Like, did he have some sort of a low-level concussion or something? Because they didn't sign this guy to be this bad. I mean, nobody expected him to be that bad.
No, he had career lows.
Yeah, but he was unplayable.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason he was playing towards the end was, we'll get into this later in the second half of the season, but he had to play.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the second half of the season. There's still hope right now, so let's keep going.
Yeah, well, the following game, this was the Rams game. They lost 38-11, but really it was basically 50-0.
Right.
I could have not gone to this game. Would have been great. But again, this is where Andrew Thomas was trying to play hurt, and this is where he really hurt himself, and then he got put on IR. And that was early. I want to say that was like the first quarter. Toney, again, with the ankle. This is where CJ Board broke his arm, where, Giants fans might be like, well, CJ Board hurt himself. Like, remember, Sterling Shepard wasn't playing at this time. Darius Slayton wasn't playing at this time. CJ Board was important for this game, and he broke his arm. Yeah. So it's not like he couldn't just, like, tough it out.
He had to play out of necessity. And, you can only have,
And also, he's not terrible.
Quality receivers out to play.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's fairly sure-handed. He's very fast. He's fairly responsible where he's supposed to be at the right time. He's just, he's depth, but like he's not garbage. So whatever. This game was an absolute blowout. It was disgusting. I'm sad I went to it, and I remember remarking that there was like a 9,000-year-old man that was a Giants fan that made it to this game, and like 6 people helped him to his seats, like family members, all to just see this debacle. I just felt so bad for him.
I think it was the only game I missed this year, and
yeah, I think so.
I wasn't too upset about that.
Yeah. And then again, this is where it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, Daniel Jones is playing again. They go to week 7. They play Carolina, who was better than us at this point. They were like almost 500. I want to say they were like 3-4, 4-3, and we were still that lowly 1-5, 1-4, whatever the fuck we were at this point. 1-5. And we kicked the shit out of them. 25-3. The defense was outstanding. We got Darnold benched. The offense managed to scheme around the O-line pretty well. I mean, they used Jones effectively in a lot of ways to get him off the point of launch, away from pressure and things like that. Because, not a bad team defensively for Carolina there. But offensively, I mean, there were 6 sacks in this game and 7 tackles for a loss. That's pretty impressive. And by the way, Daniel Jones in the offense was playing without Andrew Thomas, Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, and Sterling Shepard in this game where they went 25-3. And then that following week, they played Kansas City. And this was a game where Kansas City was playing shitty. I felt for real like, again, I didn't want to say like I felt confident. It felt like this was the team that we were ready to see. So I felt okay about this.
This was the right time. If we're going to catch a team like Kansas City, this was the time. They were scuffling really bad. There were all sorts of questions about what's going on in Mahomes, blah, blah, blah. And they tried to give it to us. It wasn't like they blew us out or anything.
Not even close. We were one of the few teams to hold them to 20 points or less. And they lost 20-17. This was a very close game that Kansas City easily could have lost and probably should have. Remember, the Giants were still shorthanded at this time.
So a common theme for this season so far is definitely losers lose. I mean, there's a lot of these games where we lose to Atlanta in the last second. With a game like this, well, we just sort of lost. Like we did not know how to win by the time we get in week 6, 7 at all, and we were just losing games.
I mean, it just felt like it was just little mistake after little mistake. We went into the final game before the bye week. We're playing the Raiders, another AFC West opponent, and this was another one where it was kind of close, but felt pretty good about it. 23-16. Devontae Booker ran for basically 100 yards. Felt like, we were very conservative about this, but it was a dangerous team to be aggressive against. You know what I mean? With Max Crosby having the year that he had, it really wasn't smart to drop back too much, but they called the game conservative, but also effectively. They attacked the right weaknesses, and frankly, the defense was locked down because I don't really believe in a lot of what Las Vegas was doing offensively this whole year, despite their trip to the playoffs, etc. This was a good game. Now, if you look at the stretch, you have that Atlanta game, you have the Washington game, you lose by 1 point. The Atlanta game, you lose on a game-ending field goal too. You beat New Orleans in overtime, a much, much better team than they are. Then you have the Dallas loss. You lost half the team to injury. Those guys are still injured for the Rams game. And then some guys start coming back. You kick the shit out of Carolina. You barely lose to Kansas City. You beat the crap out of the Raiders. It didn't really feel like it just felt like nothing was going right. It didn't feel like they were just completely unhinged and just terrible, right?
Well, I mean, again, we've said it all along that we think this team spiraled out of control when
off the bat.
Yeah, well, when the injuries started to become too much to overcome, we thought before the season started that this roster was not one of the 5 worst rosters in the league, and
no,
but
they are
hang
now.
With some of these teams, but something, when you start losing everybody, then you are one of the 5 worst teams in the league,
and rightfully so. But there is stuff for all of you New York residents to get excited about. DraftKings Sportsbook is officially live in New York State with mobile sports betting just in time for football playoffs. Right now, you can place a bet from anywhere in New York with DraftKings Sportsbook, including from the comfort of your couch. To add to the excitement, DraftKings is giving new customers a special offer that you don't want to miss. Bet just $5 on any playoff game and win $280 in free bets if your team is victorious. The wait is finally over. Head to DraftKings Sportsbook app now to check out all DraftKings' great promotions and features, including same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, just like me. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want.
Oh, Grump.
How about that?
We have a sponsor.
We do.
Thank you, DraftKings, and a sponsor that I actually use.
There you go.
We never talk on this show ever about gambling. Very, 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 very
We
rarely.
never talk about fantasy. We never talk about betting.
what about lines or anything from that perspective? And we're not going to all of a sudden pivot like every other sports show does, where it's all we care about gambling. We're not going to do that. But you know, I do gamble now. I've been waiting for this moment to have New York legal so we can bet on sports. And
Hey, you can stop coming over my house.
yeah, that's the reason why I was visiting you in Jersey. But now that we have it, it's been fun. And the last, since last Saturday, I've done pretty well. We're recording this on Monday night, right before the Arizona game, and I am right now 5-0 with the spreads on the playoff game so far.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use Just Giants, which is our promo code, and get 56-1 odds on any team in honor of Lawrence Taylor. Probably. Maybe. Probably. Yeah, exactly. Bet just $5 and you can win $280 in free bets if your team wins. So remember, guys, promo code Just Giants this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. 56-1 odds. Lawrence Taylor. It's easy to remember. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full details. Must be 21 years or older and physically present in New York. Gambling problem? Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467369. And this is where, this is where it all came to a head. They come out of the bye. They go to Tampa Bay. And I'm feeling confident. I think I might have agreed to a bet that I'm still being beholden to about this game.
We are two of them.
They look terrible. They lose to Tampa Bay 30-10. Jason Garrett gets fired the following day. Should have been fired at the end of last year. Joe Judge wanted him fired at the end of last year.
This was the outrage game. This is the game. It's on national TV. Everybody's watching it. You have Louis Riddick, who is still bent about not getting the GM job. Just you can see the glee in his eyes as he's ripping on this team. And it's just, Giants Twitter explodes. The national media explodes. Something has to be done. And unfortunately, the way the mayors seem to work is it takes that real flashpoint of outrage.
The whole world knows we suck now. Exactly. The whole world is telling me that I suck. Okay, then I'll do what you say, Joe.
Right, and this is one of those moments. I remember watching this. I was on vacation watching it at the bar at the pool, and it's just like I could feel it 5,000 miles away. Yeah. Something has to happen this week. This can't go on because now the snowball is downhill really, really fast.
Yeah, and I wonder if it was Mara that made Judge retain Garrett or if it was Gettleman.
I think it was Mara.
Yeah, I guess it would have to be, right?
I would think so.
Or maybe it was both of them, right?
I think this is a Mara thing. I think Mara is always like Garrett. All the way, always wanted to be in this organization. He, not inherited, but he was hoisted on Joe Judge in the very beginning. And I just think the only person that would allow him to get fired would be Mayer. And I think he finally gave the okay that it could be done. Now, that's not saying that they didn't go and say, I think we need to make a move sooner than that. But I think this was the moment with that flashpoint where they have to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you see what the offense is like with Freddie Kitchens following that. It's only slightly better, but they beat Philadelphia 13-7 the next week.
Let's be fair. He only had Daniel Jones for 1 week with Freddie Kitchens.
2. No, yeah, you're right. It was just that 1 week.
Right.
And not for nothing, he also had 1 week to not even a short week because that game was on Monday night, That's Tampa Bay game. So he had a short week to run Jason Garrett's playbook and come up with an offensive game plan, which, by the way, Joe Judge was helping him with. It was just that Freddie Kitchens was calling the plays, and to play a division rival. And thankfully, Patrick Graham continued steady play. 4 turnovers without several key players. That's pretty impressive. Also, Philly, not that good. The offense was schemed pretty well, but the offensive line played very bad in this game. And not surprising, right? Because Philly's defensive line is probably their biggest strong suit, except for maybe their offensive line. And the offensive line is definitely the Giants' weakest point. So not surprised. But, they were able to eke out a win. 13 points is more. It's more than they scored against Tampa Bay. So
they made Jalen Hurts look really bad. That was the key to this thing.
They did. But, also he might be. So... and then, so in that game, I believe it was like the first drive, Daniel Jones had like, it might have even been the first play where he just kind of like tucked it and ran. He got kind of like crunched a little weird, and that became the neck injury that would shut him down for the rest of the year. Going into week 13, they play. And by the way, that's when this season is officially over. Mathematics be damned. It doesn't matter if they were 1 seed at this point and they were 12-5 and they were going to go anyway, clinched home field advantage. They're losing that first playoff game anyway because Daniel Jones isn't playing.
Grump, at the time, did you feel like his season was over, Daniel Jones?
Because it was so fucking weird. I mean, it was just...
No, when they first announced the injury, did you feel like, okay,
No.
He'll be back in a couple weeks, or did you think this could be the end of it?
No, I had no idea. Like I said, the initial reporting was so strange. It wasn't even immediately after the game. It was like the next day, and it was like, oh, he's got this neck thing now. And then, then there was like...
There was like out for the year, then he won't be out for the year. It was
he had to see all these extra.
everywhere.
I think I started to suspect it like when it became he was seeing multiple doctors. That usually means that you got an answer you don't like, and you're trying to overrule it, which is usually bad. That's when I started to get a little worried about that. But I mean, as far as worried about the season was over. So
yeah.
I guess the whole situation was just weird the way it was reported. And there was even that brief moment where there was a retraction in the Post because they said it happened the week before against the Bucks. And then that came out as that was just bad information. This is where the Carpenter came from and all that. And that's really when the season ended, was week 12 beating the Eagles. They go to Miami and, under Glennon, they just look horrendous. But also, this is when we really started to see the conservative nature of Joe Judge get under the skin of Giants fans. Now, understandably, they are dealing with a backup quarterback. Joe Judge probably knows that Daniel Jones does not have a good outlook on playing for the rest of the year. But even so, packing it in at week 13 in an 18-week season is a tough pill to swallow. So... yeah, that conservative nature, they lose this game 20-9. The criticism for Joe Judge starts to get really loud around this time.
Yeah, because you're always looking for a scapegoat. You always want the easy solution, the easy quick fix to solve if you don't want to face reality. I think, and I think a lot of fans think that because of that run last year where they almost made the playoffs, thought that this roster was actually better than it is. And injuries, that's that, everybody has injuries, next man up. And so you factor those two things in, you're looking for who's the guy I can blame. And, for 2+ years, it was Jason Garrett. Well, when Jason Garrett's gone, who's next?
Yeah, but that also... That silliness in looking at it that way is just, you're not accounting for the injuries that are just nobody's fault. You're not accounting for... I'm
not giving anybody passes for what they think. I'm just saying how...
No, I understand.
And you start getting this mob mentality. And now, in this day and age, we're talking in 2022 now, where, a meme gets out, and it just, it goes through the internet in 15 minutes. Every talking head on every show is saying the same thing. They're all parroting each other. And, you talk to people, and they're basically saying exactly what they heard on Morning Take or, what they're reading in the Daily News or what they're saying on The Fan. And it's just nobody looks at anything objective anymore or with their own eyes. They just following the mob, narrative. And at this point, it's almost impossible to – we thought at the time there was still a chance that – Joe Judge could be salvaged. We at the time we were pretty sure he was coming back, because right around this time was in the reports where he would be back next year, which made a lot of people angry. But we thought even if he's coming back, he could be salvaged still. But unfortunately, in the next couple of weeks, it became unsalvageable, I guess.
Yeah. And just for the record, I do think that Joe Judge can be a decent head coach in the NFL. I mean, he is young, so all the things that I have to complain about, the time management, he can change those. Those are not stuck in him kind of Mike McCarthy fake, I took a year off to listen to the analytics and change my ways, and then actually admit that was not true at all, and go right back to your same bullshit. The time management stuff, the conservative nature of things, he can actually improve on those over time.
Joe Judge was the scapegoat.
He was. I mean, he was, but he also did need to get fired, in my opinion. Given, and it's not his. It's more Mara's fault in the way they handled everything post Jerry Reese and Tom Coughlin. All came to this point where it just falls on Joe Judge because of poor decision after poor decision. That's my actual take from that. But every other game that followed that Miami game, once we knew Daniel Jones was done and what we saw out of Mike Glennon, those following games against the Chargers, Cowboys, Eagles, Chicago, and Washington, the games themselves weren't the stories. The stories were more injuries. I mean, at this point, it was just like the only thing newsworthy. Leonard Williams hurt his elbow. Kadarius Toney tests positive for COVID. He doesn't play again. Ben Bredeson hurts his leg. Shep tears his Achilles against Dallas. Yeah. Tears his ACL against Philly. One of the worst things that could have happened. In Week 17, even Mike Glennon gets hurt. I mean, come on. And that's where we get the big Joe Judge answer to the media, which became the story up until probably now.
Well, the two biggest stories about Joe Judge, which, I think are kind of irrelevant personally, but, the people latched onto it, were the press conference and the quarterback sneak on 3rd and 9. Mm-hmm. Which, if you are, and I'm gonna die on this hill about that one. I have been all along with Twitter, friends, whatever. What are you supposed to do in that situation? This kind of, again, this, jockey attitude of like, oh, you play every play. That's not playing to win. It's embarrassing. It's like, you saw what this offense has been reduced to. You see the complete lack of confidence in a guy like Fromm. You see what this offensive line can't do, what this running game can't do. It was an insignificant play in an insignificant part of a game in an insignificant season. But people thought that was the aha. That's why this coach has to go. And when shit's flowing downstream, it's going to take everything with it. And that became a video meme that encapsulates all that's wrong with this team. Nothing wrong with it on its own, but it's just one of those you see, and there's nothing you can do.
It's just one of those things where you just don't have the credibility to do that. You know what I mean? I understand what he did. I probably would have done the same thing. I've made jokes about doing that the whole year. I mean, yeah. Steve Spurrier punts on 3rd down and he's still revered. Looked back on because he has the credibility to say, it ain't my fault. This team sucks. And then I'm punting. Forget it. You know what I mean? That's kind of where JoJo was. It's not my fault. This roster sucks. Everyone that I want to be playing is hurt. Right. Forget it. I'm just going to run a quarterback sneak and get the hell out of here. It's the last game of the year. Who gives a shit? And if Bill Belichick does that, nobody in New England cares. If anything, they back Bill Belichick and criticize the roster. You know what I mean? There's like, this guy's hurt. We got to get something better. We got to figure that this guy is always hurt. We got to get somebody else better to do that. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. Joe Judge doesn't have the credibility to do the right thing at that time. He has to avoid criticism, run a real play, which is stupid, and he didn't do that.
Okay, whatever, that's fine, but still, again, people act like this was like...
No, I'm on your side here. I'm on your side here.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's just... You lose all sense of perspective, because you're in a mob. Mobs act that way. When there's the riots are going on, and you name your city for your name what reason, but people do not act like rational, civilized people. You go down to your basic...
instincts,
savage instincts of just, you're not thinking. And again, I'm not equating Giant fans in a losing season to mobs that have happened throughout history, but it's just kind of like you stop taking a step back and thinking of things analytically or in any sort of perspective. It's just, as another thing, I'm embarrassed by something else. Something has to change. What can I do to change it? And,
at the end of the season, John Mara has rightfully, I guess, smacked the back of the horse that Dave Gettleman is riding into the sunset, and then savagely swung the axe at Joe Judge. So we're in the position now where we are hiring a new general manager. Those interviews, the first round of interviews are done. 9 GM candidates, and now we are going to hear about, when the news breaks, We're going to hear about the ones that are invited back for a second interview, which I believe they're in-person interviews. And, that person apparently has control over the vision of this organization, which includes the coaching choices. What are these people inheriting right now? And what is the state of this team? This team that I stand by, if they were healthy, would have been about a middle-of-the-pack fringe playoff team, probably has a better shot at replacing Philly and their wild card seed. But they weren't healthy. They weren't ready for the season. They had a bad offensive coordinator they just let start the year, and therefore this is what is the charred remains of this roster. What is this person inheriting?
I think it's a to be known, because quite frankly, there's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made on this roster to get ourselves out of salary cap hell. That, if you look at the final 53 or the 53, men, if they want to keep going forward, some of these guys are going to be cap casualties. So it's probably going to be less than we even have at this moment. I mean, all we really have right now that we can kind of say definitively is part of this team going forward is a left tackle.
That's one of those things that's like, that guy is probably heading towards a very large second contract with this team. He's probably becoming a face of the franchise kind of guy in the way an offensive lineman can. A Nick Mangold, a Tyron Smith, a Jason Kelsey, Quentin Nelson kind of guy.
Right. Well, even to say there's a young core that's something to start with. I mean, even the way the defense is built. I mean, there's a couple.
It's kind of built to Patrick Graham's pleasure, to be honest.
Yeah, but again, there may not be a Patrick Graham next year.
There probably won't be.
Right. So if there's no Patrick Graham next year, the next guy come in, this might not be what he wants.
That's very true.
And you might see a different scheme potentially. You might see, and again, factoring in salary cap things. There's some guys that were brought in on some pretty, hefty salaries that just may not fit anymore. So,
you look at the top contenders, the top players of this team, and on offense, you talk about, the exciting guys of Saquon Barkley and Kadarius Toney are exciting, and that's about it.
Is Barkley exciting anymore?
Yes, he's exciting. I think he is. He's playing in a shitty off. Come on. He's playing Jason Garrett's garbage bullshit offense with no offensive line, no running back's going to look good. That's it just is what it is. I look at what he did with Pat Shermer.
There wasn't even the random 4 or 5 plays this year. It's like, okay, there's still the old Barkley there. Even plays where he managed to get outside and get 15, 20 yards. And again, let's give some leeway with him because he had a very, very serious injury.
And also an ankle injury that he played
and probably needs another year to be fully healthy coming into next season. So
there's that, but also, like I said, he had a sprained ankle by week 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, returning from ACL, then sprained ankle, and not for nothing, he's running into a wall in the backfield as well. So, yes, Saquon Barkley is an exciting player when he gets into space. If only we had an offensive coordinator that could do that, and if only we had an offensive line that could block. Oh well. I'm talking about a fresh. Stop. We're looking at Barkley all the wrong way. We're talking about a new GM and a new head coach coming in. Is Barkley exciting? Yes or no? The answer is yes. That's just a fact. He's under contract. He's not going anywhere. No one's going to trade for him. So what you have is what you have. He's an exciting piece.
So let's frame this conversation so we're on the same page.
It's not something to build around, though.
What does this team have to inherit for 2022, or what is this team for building?
Well, you didn't let me finish. That was what I was trying to say. The exciting guys of Saquon Barkley and Kadarius Toney are only mildly exciting. Kadarius Toney has to show that he's available to be something to build around. Saquon Barkley is not something to be on. He will not be here beyond his original contract. I seriously doubt. So those two guys are right off the bat not really that enticing for a new guy to come in. Kadarius Toney more so than Barkley. Daniel Jones, not that enticing. There's stuff there to work with. You can work with him. But, he's not shown anything to be excited about. Kenny Golladay is something that he has a career that shows, outside of the Jason Garrett offense, that he is something to be excited about. But he's a really high-priced guy. He's not young, and he's not cheap. Sterling Shepard. Yeah, and he's not durable. That's always been his problem. You have Andrew Thomas. That's about it. There's nothing really to complain about with Andrew Thomas there. Definitely solidify himself as a top 5 tackle in the league. He's getting there. He is getting there. Remember, hurt for 2 years too. 3 offensive line coaches also in the last 2 years. So there's that. And then you flip to the defense. I think Azeez Ojulari is something to be excited about, to work around as a new head coach coming in. He's going to be here for a while. Plus, he's extremely young. So there's that. Xavier McKinney, I think, is another one. Yes. That's someone you can build around. But again, this is not all world talent, I don't think. I think he's a very good free safety. I think the window of opportunity for you to utilize him may not be, well, it's not going to be Charles Woodson level of window of opportunity. We'll say that. And then the other guys on defense, Blake Martinez, James Bradbury. Blake Martinez is hurt for starters. James Bradbury, Adoree Jackson, Leonard Williams, all those, all high-priced guys. And those are the next ones. I mean, you can get somewhat excited, I guess, about Dexter Lawrence. He's not really under a rookie contract for much longer.
Yeah, I mean...
No longer than Daniel Jones.
If we're talking what we're building around, I don't know.
Yeah.
So really, there's not much. That's what we're basically saying.
So you said you went 5-0 this weekend. Tell me all about it.
5-0. I mean, I think it's never happened in recorded history that anybody has predicted the every game of the playoffs through the Super Bowl. But I am on the road for 5-0 so far. The first 5. I hit the Bengals, and I hit Buffalo on Saturday. A lot of things like with gambling, and this is not going to become a gambling show, guys. So don't think we're going to be doing this, going forward, talking about my personal picks or anything. But the more time you have to think about it, people start getting contrarian views about things. Like, people started talking themselves into the Raiders. Like, oh, maybe the Raiders, Nah. I have 2 things I look at a playoff game. I always look at who's a better coach, who's a better quarterback. I don't even worry so much about home field advantage anymore to me, because it feels like, more teams are playing in domes. There's better grass. There's better things. It's easier access to get tickets than it was 10, 15 years ago. So you have a lot of away fans. I mean, look at how many San Francisco fans are in Dallas, for example. So to me, when I'm looking at like picking games and stuff, to me, it's always who has the better head coach, who has the better quarterback. And to me, those are 2 no-brainers on Saturday, right? I mean, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, those are kind of no-brainers.
Yeah, I think also just looking at the offense, because the playoffs starts to become who is capable of scoring all the points, and it's just you get roadblocks of defense in there, right? Where it's just like I mean, that's a tough defense they have to go against. But if any offense continually puts up 40 points, even going up against a good defense, it's just a matter of can their defense hold their offense to under 20 points or something like that. So I look at a lot of the offense stuff, and Buffalo is just a juggernaut offense. Just so easy to see. And that kind of mostly stayed in tune for most of the weekend, right? Tampa Bay, another juggernaut offense, Philly truly didn't belong. And not for nothing, we were kind of talking about, the beginning of 2021 and how we felt about 2022 or 2020 and, the way they ended that year. If Philly didn't tank last year and the Giants snuck into the playoffs, it probably would have looked a lot like that Tampa Bay game, to be honest.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But remember something, too, and this is something that people have been complaining about, saying that, having that extra playoff team and the extra game is bad because there's been blowouts this week.
It's just too small of a sample size yet.
But also, to me, it's always a net positive. I think having an extra team in the playoffs makes the final month of the season more exciting for more fan bases and for even just us. When the playoffs are kind of decided already. When you get to week 16 and 17, you have a lot of games that are just completely meaningless. Starting quarterbacks are benched, and it's just garbage. When you have an extra playoff spot, you all of a sudden, have 5 and 6 and 7 teams that are thinking about that final 3-4 weeks. It just makes it more exciting and more interesting having those possibilities. So, okay, is there a team like Philly that's in the playoffs that's probably going to get, trucked by a team like Tampa Bay? That's very possible. But to me, the net excitement for the last 4 or 5 weeks more than offsets that. And play blowouts happen all the time. I mean, how many years in a row was a Super Bowl a blowout? Back in the old, when people would think of the golden days of like Dallas and San Francisco winning Super Bowls. So the playoffs are not designed for your entertainment. Playoffs are designed to determine a champion. And if there are blowouts along the way, so be it. So I don't have a problem with the extra team coming in because it made December more exciting for me.
I mean, it's all designed for our entertainment. But, adding that extra team is not to determine the best team. That is for entertainment. And it was entertaining watching Philly lose. But also it's entertaining anyway because to me, if you have to suffer through 3 years of dealing with a 7th seed getting absolutely blown out, and in that 4th year, that 7th seed makes it all the way to the AFC or NFC championship game, then it's worth it. That's just the way I view it. Because then there was a team that probably belonged and probably had some mid-season catastrophe that they recovered from just enough to sneak in, but truly did belong. So I don't have a problem with it. Now, you were very heavily invested in the San Francisco-Dallas game. That was more so than most Giants fans because you have a slight 49ers, I guess, I don't want to say bias, but I don't know, whatever.
I married Sourdough Sam over here, so yeah, she's a huge 49er fan. So obviously my main investment was making sure Dallas lost. So now Dallas could become the butt of jokes for yet another year. So congratulations to them. I'm sure they'll win the offseason again. Good for them. But that San Francisco team, I mean, they are the 2 or 3 bad throws a game from Jimmy G away from being a very, very serious threat to Green Bay or Tampa Bay. I mean, they got some problems now. They got some very significant injuries coming up that they suffered this past week, but that team's solid. And,
well coached.
And we talked about this last week when we were talking about the GM search. They built that team the right way and fast. And
definitely fast. I don't know about the right way. I'm a little more lukewarm on San Francisco than, but go on.
What's your...
Jimmy G.
I mean...
They hitched their wagon to him in the biggest way. Huge trade and then followed up with a massive contract. And would you say he is the weakest starter on that team?
On the whole team?
Starter?
On the 49ers? I have to do an evaluation of all 22. But
is it at least in the conversation that the quarterback might be one of the weakest points?
Well, I mean, they also
they drafted a quarterback already.
I was just gonna say he's also kind of viewed now as a stopgap, but to me that's a good organization where they made the investment in the guy. They went out, they got him, they made the investment, and if it's not working, they are planning for life after him.
Well, so the way I view it is, I think he became a stopgap, and I think they did a good job of making him a stopgap. The more impressive thing was making the team solid despite the giant contract. That is where I give them the credit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the time when they got him, you have the opportunity to get a guy who everybody thought was going to be, I guess a lot of people thought he was going to be eventually the heir apparent to Brady in New England, and Brady just never got old and never got bad, and they just they decided to move on from him. But I don't have any problem at all with making trading for him and even giving him what they gave up, and even what is his contract? I mean, relative to other starting quarterbacks in the league?
I forget. I think when it was given to him, he was the highest paid.
Right, but those things always kind of move. So
they always change, but he didn't deserve. I mean, the fork fell out of my hand when I read it. I mean, that's my point. I get what you're saying. I'm just saying it is, in my opinion, a blemish of how much of that wagon got hitched to that, especially given the injuries and things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
but they've recovered from it. If Trey Lance.
And guess what? If they go in next week and they beat Green Bay, I think all worth it, right?
Well, let's slide into that. We're talking about betting. We've got some games coming up here. Cincinnati is at Tennessee. Tennessee is minus 3.5. I feel Tennessee's got this one.
I do too. I think, in the first weekend of Wildcard Weekend, quite often you'll see a wildcard team that's better than the host, the division winner.
Yeah.
But now the Tennessee, Derrick Henry's playing and he's held healthy enough. They're awfully tough to beat, and I'm still not sold on Cincinnati. It's one of those teams that maybe just my own perception of them in my head, but I have to see it to really, really believe it.
I just think they're a year away from really competing. They're still not very good.
Yeah, I agree.
They're just good in the right places.
Right. They have an up and coming quarterback who's going to get better and better and better, and he's got a great wide receiver. But I think there's still some work to be done. I don't think they're not ready for prime time just yet.
No. San Francisco is at Green Bay though. Green Bay is -5.5.
I think people are forgetting about Green Bay. I
think Green Bay's really got this.
I mean, let's everywhere right now is all over Buffalo. They're oh, that team's gonna be really tough to beat going forward and everything. But Green Bay's good. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, as much of a prick he is, he's really good.
And they got that home field advantage in deep January.
And all the injuries that San Francisco had this past week.
Yeah, I mean they lost so many key guys in that game.
And if Jimmy G throws that horrendous pick like he did last week, it could be curtains. So, what was the interesting thing? You texted me something yesterday about what was your analysis of
back to back
Dak and Jimmy G that was really good.
I tweeted it today too. But those were true in the moment things where I was just like I couldn't contain it anymore. I've been saying it for a long time, but Dak Prescott is a pedestrian quarterback on a stacked offense, and I said change my mind, and you said I can't. And then I said basically a similar thing about Jimmy G. I said Jimmy G is a pedestrian quarterback or a below. I think I said Dak was a slightly above average quarterback on a stacked offense, and that Jimmy G was a average quarterback on a good offense with a really good head coach. Mm-hmm. And I think both of those things are true.
I agree. Yeah. I think, right now, I know we've done this a few times in the past. How do you rank right now the four quarterbacks in the East, NFC East?
Dak is at the top. I mean, I don't know. It's so hard because I don't know what Dak is when guys are hurt or missing or whatever. I don't know what Dak is like with pedestrian talent, really. But I guess I would say Dak is probably at the top.
Well, let's forget about him for a minute. Let's assume that Daniel Jones is healthy next year, and you had a draft. Would you take Daniel Jones or Jalen Hurts?
I would take Daniel Jones. He's more the style of quarterback. He's a better thrower. I mean, that is just a fact. Jalen Hurts can make a lot of things happen to help you win games, but those are the kind of things you see when your team is bad. You know what I mean? He can make up for busted plays and make something happen out of it. But he's not like the Russell Wilson where he's always looking downfield to make the throw, and escapability is kind of a means to get there.
Jalen Hurts, up the mess.
Yeah, exactly. That's the difference there. I think when Jalen Hurts has to sit in the pocket and he's really got to throw to make he looks terrible. Now he could get better. I don't know. I'm not saying he's forever that bad, but right now Daniel Jones is more. For me, Daniel Jones. A lot of what I'm worried about with him is his availability now. Mm-hmm. He's not been available, right. And that makes him kind of bad. Especially since right now I don't know what his next status is.
Especially when you have to make a major decision about picking up the fifth year or not with him, or yeah. And then we would say
Heineke,
Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick is technically the starter, right?
At this point, I think Fitzpatrick was only signed for a year, so no. Okay. But also, I think at this point, if he wasn't signed for just a year, they're going to cut him and just roll with Heineke because at this point, they probably need a better quarterback, but forget it. Forget it. Heineke is not going to offer you too much less than a cheap veteran. So you might as well just roll with him and let him keep getting better and see what you have, and then just draft a good one.
Agreed.
We're recording this in the middle of the Arizona and Rams game, so we're going to skip that. So we don't know who Tampa Bay is playing at this time, but tell me what you think about Buffalo at Kansas City, and we'll wrap this up. It's -2.5 for Kansas City, by the way.
It's a hell of a game, and I'm gonna go with Kansas City. And also, if you don't know this about me, I usually tend to stick with favorites most of the time. But Kansas City, for all the doldrums they were in the middle of the season when they played us, was probably close to the low point of their season, even though they did beat us. They're back, and we saw a clinic. I mean, again, Pittsburgh is the the Philly equivalent on the AFC of a team that probably shouldn't even be in the playoffs to begin with, but Mahomes just sliced through that defense, and that is going to be a hell of a game. I mean, you're going to have two quarterbacks that are playing the best, they probably played in their careers, both of them right now. They're both on a roll. I think there is a home field advantage in Kansas City where other places might not. I think it'll be, high scoring and close, but I think Kansas City will win. I think they'll cover. What did you say the line was?
2.5.
I think it's going to be, they'll win by within a touchdown.
I think I'm going Buffalo on this one, man. And I'll say it this way: is I like their defense more. I think they have more of a shot to stop a high-powered offense than Kansas City does. I'm not a huge believer in Steve Spagnuolo, believe it or not. I think history has shown us enough that he is good at times, but mostly bad. So, this is going to come down to a shootout. These are two high-powered offenses, and right now I think it's going to come down to which defense can slow down the other one enough. Even though Kansas City's offense I believe in more, I just think that they're going to struggle to score enough points to outscore Buffalo in this game. But it's going to be close for sure. That's what I definitely feel like. I think it's going to be about a 7-point game, 6-point game.
And highly entertaining, too, I think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's what we aim for.
Those are two of the most exciting quarterbacks you'll ever see, I think, just for making things happen and creating something out of nothing, but not in a way of, like, desperation. It's almost like part of the game plan. Like some of these throws that Mahomes make are just like, yeah, we designed that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Josh Allen to some extent as well.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. This was a long one, but that's okay. So, like we said at the top of the show, be sure to follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan. Show is audio as well. iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play. And, of course, on YouTube, where we have a bunch more subscribers, where you get to see our beautiful faces. And like I said at the top, there will be, in the very near future, some video content alongside of that. So subscribing to YouTube is probably a good idea if you're into that. If not, whatever. All right, guys, we will see you next time. Go Giants.
Go Giants.